UFC Fight Night Cory Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov is happening this weekend in the UAE, and in this video I'm going to be giving you my predictions and breakdown for every single fight on the card and predicting all of the card's best moments. So let's get into the first fight of Sedriques Dumas versus Denis Tiuliulin. So when we look at Tiuliulin, I mean, he has only lost to really strong competition in the last couple years. So in his last 5 fights, they're pretty much all been very athletic guys or guys on the brink of the top 15. Like, you got Robocop, Jung Young Park, you got Christian Leroy Duncan as well, who's on the come up, aside from getting beaten by Robocop just recently. But with all that, honestly, I just don't think Denis Tiuliulin should be in the UFC anymore. I mean, his last win was against Jamie Pickett, which was 3 years ago. And this guy's 36 years old. I mean, he's got very poor submission defense. He's getting very chinny as well. And that's pretty much with every performance we're seeing. Obviously, it's against these athletic guys that do have the power like Robocop. But still, you know, if the chin's getting worn down, it's not getting any better in the next performance, even if the guy isn't a KO threat. Your chin's your chin, and if it's getting worn down, it's getting worn down. And that is a big issue with Denis Tiuliulin. I will say, pretty much aside from like all that, he does have the KO power there. He does have the power, so there always is a chance. But Dumas, even though he's less experienced, I mean, he's the longer, rangier fighter. He's still on the come up, and he's been improving performance after performance. You know, he's got a decent stand up. He's got decent ground game. He's just someone that needs to sharpen his tools overall. And I don't think Tiuliulin's going to be the guy to test him, to be honest. Dumas has decent takedown defense, and he's got very good movement as well. And he's the rangier fighter in this matchup. I mean, if he plays it smart and doesn't give Tiuliulin the opportunity to KO him, I mean, I don't see Tiuliulin getting a win here. I think Dumas can utilize that range, pick Denis Tiuliulin apart with that jab, and I think he'll just break him down over the rounds. Honestly, I think by the time it gets to around the 3rd round, I really think that Tiuliulin's going to be struggling in this fight if it gets there. And honestly, I really think that Sedriques Dumas will break him down, point fight him over the first 2 rounds, gets into the 3rd round, and I think he secures the submission win in this fight. And he has looked fairly good overall when it comes to even just the short amount of time he's been in the UFC. I mean, he's lost to, you know, Murzakanov, but aside from that, I think he actually has looked pretty good. He lost to Murzakanov and Fremd, but aside from that, I think his winning performances have looked very good, and those guys aren't that bad. So Sedriques Dumas, in contrast, getting a fight like Denis Tiuliulin, honestly, 3rd round, he'll choke him out. And this is a good tune-up fight for Dumas to get ahead of the game while he is 28 years old and hopefully get up those rankings. And moving up to Herbert versus Rolando Bedoya. So I went on the younger side in the last fight with Sedriques Dumas, but in this fight, I'm going to be going on the older side. I'm going to be going with Herbert. Now, Herbert, he is 36 years old now, but he's just one of those fighters that you can never count out of a fight. I mean, he's very competitive still. He's still got power, that's for sure. I mean, he had a very competitive fight with Ziam in his last fight. And also before that, went to a draw with Ludovic Klein, who is one of the most underrated fighters right now. And then, of course, to top all those off, he almost decapitated Ilia Topuria, who is the champion right now. Almost took his head clean off with a head kick, which is amazing, but I don't think he's going to be doing the same thing to Rolando Bedoya, because Bedoya, he's South American. The South American chins, the level of durability over there is just something else. I mean, example A is Chito Vera, who we will get into later in this card. But looking at Bedoya, he has had a pretty tricky run in the UFC so far. I mean, he lost to Song Kanan, and he actually made it to a decision with Chaos Williams, who hits like an absolute freight train. But that's just more credit to me talking about, obviously, the South American chin. But I think on the other side of that, when it comes to Bedoya, the experience and the technical kickboxing level of Herbert, I think that just has a decision win written all over it for him. I mean, he is getting older, but he's still got the speed and he's got the precision there to outwork Bedoya on the feet. Bedoya, he's got power, and he's pretty accurate, but he's slow. I mean, that could change when it comes to dropping down to lightweight, but we'll have to see. And from what we've seen so far, I'm more comfortable going with Jai Herbert if it comes to those kind of exchanges, especially with that speed. And it's going to be fascinating to see how Bedoya actually, you know, works with it. See if he can actually do something about it, possibly look at takedowns, you know, anything there. But I really feel like Jai Herbert's going to get the advantage on the feet with this, just with the speed and the technical kickboxing there. So I am going to call Jai Herbert to get a decision win here, as long as he, you know, keeps his movement up, keeps his lateral and linear movement up, and make sure that he can outstrike Rolando Bedoya. I think that he is going to be getting the win here by a pretty clear decision. Moving up, Viktoriia Dudakova versus Sam Hughes. Now, I feel like this is definitely a fight that the UFC has set up to try and push Dudakova up to the next level in that strawweight division, without taking a heap of risk. I mean, Sam Hughes in the UFC, she's 3 wins and 5 losses now. And Dudakova is one of the, you know, the few Russian fighters that are in women's MMA that can actually do a better job of pulling more out of an audience when it comes to finishes. I mean, she's 3-0, she's undefeated, she gets finishes, so she's more of a draw, especially for lighter weight classes like that, especially strawweight. So I am feeling that this is a bit of a setup there, and I think if she does win this will probably push her right up to just being outside the rankings. One more fight and then she'll be in the rankings, I do believe. And I see her getting this one done pretty clearly, to be honest. But and like, even though she's finished most of her fights, Sam Hughes is pretty durable. She is pretty durable. She's pretty gritty. I don't really think I see Dudakova actually getting it out of there when it comes to a finish. But I think she's just going to frustrate Sam Hughes so much. I think when it comes to her switching up her game, Dudakova is very good at striking to secure her level changes. And I think that wrestling pedigree there, in terms of just making sure she can level change and keep Sam Hughes guessing and frustrate her, I think that she is going to be able to win this by a pretty clear 30-27 unanimous decision, this one, with a mix of utilizing the wrestling as well as keeping it at range and sticking that jab to just outpoint her completely to a decision win. Moving up, Guram Kutateladze versus Jordan Vuchenic. Now, Guram, he has definitely had a weird kind of run in the UFC. I mean, he got a split decision win over Gamrot and then barely lost to Ismagulov, and then was piecing up Elves Brenner in their fight until he got finished in the last round. So he showed a lot of promise, and he is very underrated. And I think that's just obviously due to his performance results, especially when it comes to his striking. That's the part that's mostly underrated, because he is very clean with his striking. He's got very fast, like, twitch muscles. He's very explosive, and that Muay Thai base is extremely clean. He's got very good kick speed as well, and he's got power overall. I think that's very, very good for him. And he's got, obviously, with what I've said just before, I mean, he's got the competitive experience advantage over Vuchenic. And I think that this will really come down to whether Vuchenic can actually get this fight to the ground or not, because I've seen a bit of Vuchenic's fights on the regional scene, obviously through Cage Warriors. He's got a fair few fights there, and he's a very well-rounded fighter. He doesn't really overextend, and he uses his striking to set up his offensive wrestling threat very well, and then he goes to hunt for the submission win. He's got very good chokes on his side. And I think if he does get it to the ground, I think he's got a very good chance of being able to win it. But that's if it does get to the ground. Because, I mean, yes, he does have a very patient approach, but Guram has pretty good takedown defense. And the thing I'm not liking for Vuchenic in this fight is the speed and aggression difference when it comes to this. I think when it comes to both of these guys being very durable, I mean, aside from Guram's body, I'm liking the output and the strike speed and the aggression a bit more in this matchup, in combination with the much better competitive experience here. I mean, Guram's got the strike speed advantage, and he stuffs 75% of the takedowns that are shot on him, and that's going against guys like Gamrot and Elvis Brenner they're very good with their take, especially Gamrot is very good with his takedowns, and he stuffed over half of both of their attempts when they fought. So I am going to be going with Guram for the decision win here, not the finish, because Vuchenic, it's not that he's super durable. He's more so very defensively sound on the feet. I mean, he uses his teeps, he uses his jabs, he uses his long-range weapons very well to maintain distance and then to counter-strike fairly well, but I don't see him really matching up with the speed of Guram to that extent. But I think the speed and the experience of Guram is going to ruin the debut for Vuchenic in this one. Moving up, Shamiel Gaziev versus Don'Tale Mayes. Big Daddy Gaziev is back. Let's go. I am very happy to see this absolute athletic specimen on the UFC roster back up and running, and he has got to have something to prove. After that Rosenstruik fight, he looked like a fish out of water. In all honesty, it was not looking good. And honestly, when it comes to this matchup, I've just obviously said that about Shamiel, but I'm going to be taking Don'Tale Mayes in this fight. I am going to take him as the underdog. I mean, I took him in the underdog against KO Machado in their fight, and I was confident he was going to get it done, and I think he can get it done again here. And I think that's because Gaziev, I think Gaziev's actually pretty overrated, to be honest. Like, when it comes to his record, he's 12-1, but the pedigree of fighters that he has fought is just not fantastic, to be honest, even compared to Don'Tale Mayes. I just don't think it's great. He hasn't fought anyone. I mean, he hasn't won against anyone that's really that notable. I mean, he fought Bedoya. Bedoya doesn't look that great. He had an absolutely shit performance against Andrei Arlovsky. So that really puts it into perspective for what Shamiel has faced. And I would be more comfortable in terms of actually picking Shamiel with that power, especially if this was in the Apex, if it was in a smaller cage, if we had something smaller. But I think knowing that it's going to be in a bigger octagon against a guy who is more athletic and uses the jabs and the long lead uppercuts very well in Don'Tale Mayes, I'm liking it for him a whole lot more. And I think that he is going to get the decision in this one, as you can see on the screen, because he's got the longer reach, and he's not a huge KO artist, but he's got the longer reach. His striking and his takedown defense have improved very well over the last couple of fights, and he is durable himself. He's only been finished once by KO TKO. And I think with Don'Tale, with the last couple of performances he's had, and with that reach advantage he's got, I think that he is going to be able to take the decision win in this one. I think he's just going to use that volume to outstrike Gaziev, and hopefully Don'Tale's smart, obviously rip that body so much, because you look at Rosenstruik is a very similar fighter in terms of, physical structure to Don'Tale Mayes, and Rosenstruik did a fantastic job of just ripping through the body, and Gaziev just drowned out. He drowned out completely. He looked like a fish out of water. And I think Don'Tale Mayes does have the ability to do the same thing. Not as cleanly, definitely not. Don'Tale Mayes is definitely not as good as Rosenstruik, but with good lateral movement, I do think Don'Tale Mayes is going to be able to keep away from Shamiel Gaziev in terms of pressuring, and I think he's going to do a good job of frustrating him and slowing him down. And yeah, this is Gaziev's kryptonite. Going against someone that is on the more athletic side, that has very good movement and has a longer reach, I'm liking the underdog pick here, honestly. And he's got the reach advantage, he's got the striking, he's got the strike accuracy advantage here as well. So unless Gaziev can get Don'Tale Mayes down, which he has a good takedown defense, I just don't think I see Gaziev winning this one unless he gets an old-fashioned heavyweight, just knocks Don'Tale Mayes the fuck out. But yeah, I'm not riding on that. I'm riding on Don'Tale Mayes, utilizing his game and dictating that pace that he wants to set. And if Gaziev doesn't cut him off or get him down, I think that he is in trouble. And overall, yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with Mayes getting the decision win in this one. Moving up, Mohammad Yahya versus Kaue Fernandes. Now, this is going to be a good fight, but I think it's going to be a very close fight. When we look at Mohammad Yahya, he's the guy that's fighting at home. And he's got power and he loves to forward pressure. He knows how to utilize it well. I mean, he even did it against Trevor Peek, who hits like a freight train. And that just shows that he has confidence and trust in his own power and abilities, which is good. But then we got Kaue, who is a very good kickboxer. He has got a very good base and he has very dangerous kicks. Very dangerous kicks. He's got good KO power on his side as well. And honestly, whoever can execute a ground/clinch game in this fight, I think is going to be the one that is going to be able to take it. And that's why I'm going to be taking Kaue in this fight. I mean, he's got a very good clinch game and he times his strikes very well in and out of the clinch, especially with the left high kick. The left high kick is his best weapon and he's very good at utilizing it off the break. And Yahya does keep his hands pretty low in his fights, which he did against Trevor Peek, who is a very big power puncher. So I'm extremely confident he's going to be doing the exact same thing against Kaue Fernandes. And you don't want to be doing that against someone that has a lot of power, which Kaue does have. I mean, he's got the KO power there and he's got a very good base in terms of just technical, like, capabilities. His striking is just very clean and he has as much power as Yahya, honestly, possibly even more, especially when it comes to the kicks, probably even more. And Yahya isn't very good at mixing up his striking. He's very boxing oriented, doesn't use his legs too much. And if we're looking at Kaue Fernandes statistically, he's a laser on the feet. He hits it over a 70% clip and he just has more weapons to use. I mean, he uses his hands and his feet very well. Uses those kicks very well. I mean, he even uses a bit of Muay Thai in there, which I've seen on the regional scene too. So yeah, just in terms of an arsenal, I'm liking Kaue's chances a lot more. Mohammad Yahya needs to get this fight to the ground. He really does. I mean, he needs to try his hardest to get it to the ground, especially if Kaue starts getting his reads and finding his distance and dictates the pace. But I don't think Mohammad Yahya has the wrestling pedigree to get it done. So I'm pretty confident that Kaue Fernandes is going to get a pretty nice KO TKO finish in this one, probably around the second round. And moving on to our feature prelim, we got Alonzo Menifield versus Azamat Murzakanov. Now, this fight I think is going to be a very big momentum seesaw. I think it's going to be very interesting to see who gets who on the back foot in this fight, because I feel like whoever dictates the pace and has the forward pressure going for them, the other one's going to be in trouble. Now, when we look at Menifield, I mean, he's got the power, he's got the strength, and I'd give him the offensive wrestling threat in this fight as well over Azamat, and he's fought the better competition. But with all that being said, I'm going to be taking Azamat Murzakanov by KO TKO. I just think he's got the crisper striking. He is definitely one of the most dangerous, just natural boxers in the light heavyweight division. And he's also a southpaw, which opens up a lot more challenges for those orthodox fighters like Alonzo Menifield, who usually fights orthodox style fighters. And that being said as well, Azamat has a very good check lead hook counter, which is very good to counter fighters that are pressuring forward against him, which he showed very well against Dustin Jacoby, who is a more clinical striker than Alonzo Menifield. So I think he's going to be able to deal with Menifield's pressure a lot better than Menifield would be able to deal with Azamat's, that's for sure. And the biggest issue I see in this fight and why I'm so confident in taking Azamat Murzakanov is Alonzo Menifield's loss to Carlos Ulberg. And I say this because in that fight, he just bum rushed Ulberg and got taken out instantly, which is not what you want to do against a counter striker like Ulberg with that check lead hook that he does have. But from that, I think he's going to be tentative and not forward pressure as much. And I think he'll be concerned about it being the same outcome if he just bum rushes Azamat Murzakanov. But the issue is Azamat is the fighter that you do want to do that against. You just do not want to let Azamat forward pressure. Because once he tees off with his boxing, he's very explosive. That's where he gets a lot of his finishes. He gets them against the cage. He just works the body, works them to bits with the boxing, and then just takes them out. And with Alonzo Menifield, I can see him allowing Azamat Murzakanov to do that, because I feel like it's just going to play the absolute reverse in terms of a psychological perspective. He is going to play this fight the wrong way. He is going to let Azamat be on the front foot, and he's going to let his hands fly, and Azamat's going to get the finish in this fight. Now, Azamat, he is on the smaller side of light heavyweight. I mean, he's got a ridiculously short reach, which is why he needs to forward pressure and make it ugly. But he's got very good hand speed. He's very explosive. And ultimately, I do see Alonzo Menifield making that stylistic mistake in this fight. And he's going to be tentative instead of being aggressive, which he needs to be. And he's just going to let Azamat dictate the pace. And Azamat, if he gets his way, he's going to find that chin in the first or second round. And moving on to the main card, we got Joel Alvarez versus Elvis Brenner. Now, I've got to say, when it comes to this fight, I think this is the most interesting fight we've got on the card, because on one side, we've got Elvis Brenner, he's had a very tough run in the UFC in terms of competition. He's made every single fight extremely competitive, though. Even like when he's fought Mikdebek Oralbai, he's fought Guram Kutateladze as well. These guys are absolutely definitely not slouches. I mean, he's had a very, very tough opening to the UFC so far, but he's got the flatline level KO power in his hands, and he's got very good jiu-jitsu. I mean, he trains with Charles Oliveira. He's one of his main training partners, so he's got a very well-rounded game. And then, of course, on the other side, we've got Joel Alvarez. He's a versatile jiu-jitsu freak. He's gone 17-0 with submissions, and he's got decent stand-up as well. He's one of the lengthiest fighters in that division, along with like Jalen Turner. But even though he is going to have to work it and close the distance, he's going to have to make it a dogfight. Hot take, I think Elvis Brenner is going to chin Joel Alvarez. And, you know, even though Joel Alvarez, he's long, he's lengthy, he's more so an aggressor than he is a point fighter. And I don't like the chances of him getting in an exchange with someone that has as much power as Brenner. Alvarez, he's good with, especially his Muay Thai, very good elbows. He can cut them around the guard, which he destroyed Thiago Moises with, but he doesn't necessarily have like one punch KO power, which if they're getting in an exchange and Brenner is able to land what he wants to land, Alvarez could be going to sleep. And that is obviously, it's a puncher's chance kind of thing in that sense. But Elvis Brenner, he does have skill there. He's fought very tough competition. Joel Alvarez overall is the more well-rounded. He's probably just technically the better fighter. But I feel like if Elvis Brenner, with all this experience he's had coming up, I honestly do think if he goes against Joel Alvarez, and especially with their heights, 5'10 to 6'3", and Brenner gets that hand exactly where that chin is, especially if Alvarez is a taller fighter, leaves that chin exposed, which I've seen in a couple fights. Don't want that hitting your chin if it's Elvis Brenner's fist. Sorry, that's where I'm really kind of swaying in this matchup in terms of what my prediction is. I mean, we look at Alvarez, I mean, he's faced better competition overall, I'll say that. And unless you're like a wrestler that's at the level of like Arman Saruki and Islam Makhachev or like Mateusz Gamrot, I would favor him in pretty much every matchup on the ground. And I would favor him over Brenner overall when it comes to the submission game as well. Alvarez is on a level. But Elvis Brenner, I mean, he hits at a very respectable clip, and he's just a faster paced fighter. And unless Alvarez point fights, which isn't his style, that's where I'm really drawing from this. It's not his style. I'm concerned that there is going to be a conflict in his style, just like Alonzo Menifield against Azamat Murzakanov. In a very similar way, I feel like just the style that they have on the feet, I feel like it favors Brenner more. And I am going to say, I think Brenner is going to find the mark in an exchange while Alvarez is pressing forward himself. And I think Brenner is going to catch him on a counter, and he's going to get that finish win. Now, that being said, it's an extremely tough fight to call. And like, you know, their skill levels, and like contrasting their skills in terms of like, you know, their stand-up, their jiu-jitsu, and their physical attributes overall. It's very difficult to pick, but that's why I'm very interested in seeing Elvis Brenner come through those frustrating performances. If he can really land that KO power and make sure it stays off the ground in terms of Joel Alvarez's guard, I'm just going to edge the underdog win for Elvis Brenner in this one. Moving up, Mackenzie Dern versus Lupi Godinez. Now, look, I loved Mackenzie Dern's performance against Amanda Lemos in her last fight because she actually acted upon her ground game, which is by far the best part of her game, and that's because her striking is terrible. It's pretty damn terrible, and that's down to her head never moving off the center line and her strike defense being absolutely non-existent, which we saw clear as day against Jessica Andrade, who I'm surprised didn't knock her the absolute fuck out. That's, I guess, credit to Dern's durability in that sense, but those are the weaknesses that you do not want against someone like Lupi Godinez. I mean, she has some of the cleanest boxing in that division, and she has very good takedown defense as well. And also, she has good, like, great submission defenses also. She has just great defense across the board, striking, wrestling, and submission. And that's just credit to her in terms of, you know, the performances she had against like Virna Jandiroba. I mean, Virna Jandiroba couldn't even finish Lupi Godinez, and she took her back for a long period of time and could not find the finish, couldn't find an armbar, couldn't find a rear naked choke. And Virna Jandiroba has just absolutely destroyed Amanda Lemos in her last fight. So it really credits that defense for Lupi Godinez. And I don't see Dern having the tools to get Lupi out of there at all, to be honest. And I'm very confident Lupi is going to get the decision win in this one with that takedown defense holding up and countering Dern's sloppy exchange attempts on the feet. Give me the 30-27 win in this one for Lupi to hopefully now get a single-digit ranking next to her name. Moving up, Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chiesa. I know we're all thinking it. As much as everyone on planet Earth, as well as myself, wants Tony Ferguson to get out of that damn loss column, I've got Chiesa taking this one by a decision. And I'm not just beating on Tony Ferguson here. I mean, he's got the skills. I mean, he was at the top of lightweight, the hardest division for a while for a reason, you know? But I am taking this from borderline a pure health perspective. And that's like, you look at Ferguson. I mean, he has been exhausting himself with his recent performances. I mean, he's taken so much damage, and not to mention the stupid training with bloody Goggins as well. I mean, he focused pretty much entirely on cardio and not doing any form of sparring, which he did recently state. Don't know how true it is, but still it's concerning, and his last performances have been concerning. And don't get me wrong, prime for prime, Tony runs circles around Michael Chiesa, but we're not in prime for prime. We are far past that, unfortunately. And when we look at Chiesa, he's had a good, solid year of rest, and he's not taken nearly the amount of damage that Tony Ferguson has taken over the years. And Chiesa, I will say, he isn't one to inflict a lot of damage, but from a technical standpoint on the feet, I think he's just good enough to get this done, especially in contrast to an aging Ferguson, a 40-year-old Ferguson with an unorthodox style, which opens his strike defense up pretty much all the time. Ferguson does not have a good strike defense, and it's a trade-off for getting those unorthodox shots through. But that's not the style you want when you're 40 years old. You're a lot slower. You're moving up to welterweight, where you're even going to be even more slower. And yeah, I don't see Tony Ferguson having a great time in this fight, but I also don't see Michael Chiesa getting the submission win in this fight, which obviously I've gone for decision here. But Chiesa on the feet, I'm just more comfortable. I mean, he hits at a 60% clip, so he may not have the KO power, but he makes the most of his shots that land. And unless Tony can find like a Hail Mary shot on Chiesa with that unorthodox style, or get him to the ground and get that kryptonite dast choke on Michael Chiesa, I've got Chiesa taking that 29-28 decision, with Tony possibly edging out the third round out of desperation, but I just think it's going to be another sad story for Tony Ferguson in this one. Moving up the card, Marlon Vera versus Deiveson Figueiredo. This is a sick fight, and I'm loving this card. This is a fantastic fight night. And this is a battle of like a holy shit, imagine if one of these guys gets chinned, because both of these guys are just so damn durable. I mean, I'm going to say, obviously, no one's getting chinned in this fight. I highly doubt it. I mean, you look at Marlon Vera, he barely bleeds, let alone is having his chin in any form of danger. And that's the same for Figueiredo, honestly. But I'd say more so, Marlon Vera is more durable than Figueiredo, but Figueiredo has that defensively sound, the striking defense. His striking defense is very good. And I'm going to take Figueiredo by a big, fat, bloody decision in this one. The guy has been one of the most dominant champions, obviously not in this division, but in flyweight for a reason. And there's reasons why Cheeto has not. And even though it's, Marlon Vera's natural weight class, Figgy has just looked like he has absolutely no problems moving up to bantamweight. And I still actually don't understand why he was an underdog against Rob Font, honestly. He had the power there. I mean, he's very good in terms of his movement and being able to move in and out, especially in a linear sense. Very good. And against, especially, I mean, if he's doing it against Rob Font that has the speed there, what's he going to do against Marlon Vera? Marlon Vera is not fast. So I think Deiveson Figueiredo, in terms of the decision sense, I think he can do a very good job of making this a pretty decisive one at that. And Figueiredo, he might be like a bit of a bipolar weirdo on the mic, but he's got the skills. So yeah, as much as people don't like him in terms of just like as a character, he's got the skills there to shut people up. You can't deny that. And Cheeto Vera, obviously 10-0 on the ground. He's not outworking Figueiredo on the ground. And I don't see him keeping up with that speed of Figgy either. The power, yes, I see that. Both of them obviously definitely have to be careful of each other's power, but with the durability on Vera's side and with the strike defense on Figueiredo's side, I just don't see a finish happening. And statistically, Vera he throws at a higher output, but Figgy is more accurate with his shots. And this comes down to the technical capabilities, which Figgy is obviously going to be taking it with this. And I see that unanimous decision being there for him just from a technical standpoint, whether it's on the ground or whether it's on the feet. Moving up to our co-main event, Shara, Bullet, the Pirate, Magomedov, whatever the hell you want to call him, versus Mikhail Olechejczek. Now, similar to the last fight, this is going to come down to the technical capability. And I do feel sorry for Mikhail, in terms of the run that he's had. He's basically just been getting fed to the wolves, honestly. It's pretty rough for him. But, I mean, he's the one that signs a contract. He takes the fight. So, he is on a rough run. But, I mean, if he can get one win here, if he can get a win against Shara Bullet, it would be fantastic. But I think you know where this is going. I've got Shara Bullet taking this one, but I do believe it will be a decision win. And I will get into that. Shara looks great in his fights, but that's also attributed to the caliber of the opposition that he's facing. And he hasn't faced someone with the raw KO power that Mikhail has. So I think in terms of the technical capabilities, he's going to completely outmatch him. But I do strongly believe that Shara is going to be a bit more tentative in his approach, more so early in the fight, to respect Mikhail's power. And with that, I think that that's when he'll start showing out in the third round. I think he'll take the first round and the second round to really break him down, especially with the leg kicks. Utilize the body kicks in there at range. Keep Mikhail Olechejczek away from him, out of range. Then in that third round, I think he is just going to put on an absolute clinic with that versatile, unorthodox striking that he does have. But Mikhail's only been finished once by KO TKO. He does have a chin, and I feel like that's going to get him to a decision, but I think Magomed is going to be all over it. And moving on to our absolutely cracking main event, Cory Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov. I mean, this card for a fight night is fantastic. You just can't deny it. And I am honestly, I'm not going to lie, I'm more keen for this main event than the last 3 months worth of main events. And that's because I mean, I love bantamweight division, and these guys are just going to be putting on a full MMA display. Unless one of them gets chinned early, which I doubt, which I'll get into later. Yeah, these guys will just put on a full MMA display. They're both very game. I mean, you've got Cory Sandhagen, who is just a student of the game, and you've got Umar Nurmagomedov, who comes from that legendary family and has huge amount of hype behind him. And with Umar, I mean, you can't deny him, you can't deny his family, you can't deny the camp. You know, as much as they're hated, they have amazing skills coming out of that camp. And without a doubt, Umar is a top 5 fighter. He, without a doubt, is at least that. But honestly, goddamn, I just want Cory Sandhagen to chin him. And that's not because I don't like Umar. There's nothing wrong with Umar. He seems like he's a great fighter, seems like a good bloke, but Cory Sandhagen, honestly, it's his skills, it's his mindset, skill set. It's just that of like a BMF. I mean, the guy will take any fight that is competitive and that's dangerous. That's what he wants. I mean, he wants this fight to add a Nurmagomedov to his record. That's why he wants it. I mean, that's nothing more BMF than wanting to take a guy's scalp for his last name. I mean, for his family and the prowess of his family. That's insane. He's got very big BMF energy. And I mean, he's more than deserving of a title shot without this fight. Cory Sandhagen does not have to take this fight. That just emphasizes that point even more. I mean, he just wants to fight the best guys, and after this, there better be nothing but a title shot for this guy. Seriously, I mean, he has done so much in the UFC. He's fought the best of the best in terms of competition, without a doubt. Aside from the 306 main eventers, he's done it all. Realistically, he's proven his worth. He's looked fantastic in his last couple fights, and he's just getting better and better. And he's 32 years old. He's in his prime. I mean, and this is the time for him to do it. And now, with the obvious bias aside from Cory Sandhagen, this is going to be a serious challenge for Cory and Umar. It's going to be a serious challenge for both of them. And I mean, you just can't deny that. You know, both of them, I know Umar is young into the game in comparison to Cory, but he's definitely got the skills there. I mean, Umar, he isn't known as like a KO artist or anything, but we know he's got the power in his hands there if he lands correctly. We saw what he did to Raoni Barcelos, absolutely annihilated him. And of course, the best part of his game, he's got that Sambo base with the aggressive submission threat as well, which Cory has to be aware of. And that's something that is probably the biggest tell when it comes to the odds. But honestly, the odds are just fucking ridiculous in this fight. I think it would be fair to put them as like a pick'em, but having Cory as over a 3-1 underdog, I think is completely disrespectful. But seriously, I mean, both of them are very well rounded, but the experience, like, come on. I mean, aside from those 306 headliners like Merab and Sean O'Malley, Cory has fought absolutely bloody everybody and made every single fight competitive, aside from obviously Aljo choking him out. I mean, he lands over 5 strikes per minute on average. And this is against guys like TJ Dillashaw, Petr Yan, and Rob Font, who are all world-class strikers. And Umar is not on their level in terms of the striking, at least yet, and not in this matchup. He doesn't have that experience against that kind of competition, literally against none of them. And I will say that there can be contributing factors towards Umar winning outside of, that are outside of Cory's control. You know, you've got the time zone being in his favor in the UAE, which does not favor Cory. That's just very similar to literally what we had at UFC 304, with Bilal being in the favor and Leon being out of favor when it came to the time zones at UFC 304. So that could, obviously, we looked at Leon. Leon looked like shit. So that could be a possibility for Cory Sandhagen. And then, of course, we got the judges, which, the judges are just too much of a speculation. You can't actually judge an analysis on that. But I wouldn't be surprised if it got close and came to the decision. Let's be real here. They're going to edge it to Umar. That's plain and simple. But down to the point, if Umar doesn't execute a perfect wrestling game for honestly 25 minutes, I just don't see him winning, because Cory is just so versatile in his game, in his striking game. And I'm going to say it now, I've got Cory Sandhagen taking a 48-47 decision win here. He's got the higher output, extremely good lateral and linear movement to avoid and enter exchanges. So when he wants to enter, I mean, he's got the timing right to get some shots off and then exit properly, which he showed very well against Rob Font. He showed very well against Petr Yan as well. And then he's obviously got the movement there to make sure that, you know, he's always out of danger, but then he can also jump in at the same time when he needs to. And the biggest thing of all, which is where the odds are skewed in that sense, is the experience. The experience is an absolute killer here. And in my opinion, this isn't going to be like an O'Malley versus Yan kind of thing again with O'Malley. I mean, I don't see Umar just being outside the top 10, cracking right through to a title shot next. I don't think it's going to happen again unless it's some bullshit decision. And as good as he is, Sandhagen is just an absolute gamer. And I honestly, I see his takedown defense holding. I think I see it holding up more than people probably believe. I mean, that's not even just stating that. On the flip side, he has an offensive wrestling game as well, which Umar has not been tested in. I mean, he could get a takedown on Umar, we don't know, but I'm liking this more so in terms of the technical capabilities on the feet and the volume for Cory Sandhagen in this fight. I mean, he's just got the tools on the feet. He's got flying knees, he's got good hooks. I mean, he's got spinning kicks. He's got a very good arsenal there to keep Umar Nurmagomedov guessing. And if he damages him early, Umar could be tentative in the wrestling exchange. So we never know, but it's going to be very, very competitive. But huge disrespect for Cory Sandhagen when it comes to those odds, and I've got him taking the underdog decision win here. And I really hope people make a shit ton of money off this prediction win. I really hope so, because I am going to be taking him 100%. And a great underdog win here to finish off a great fight night. And moving on to the fight card awards, kicking it off with fight of the night, Cory Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov. I just don't see this being anything other than like a full high-level MMA fight on full display with all their disciplines in there. Wrestling at points, striking at points, jiu-jitsu exchanges in points as well. You know, wrestling, transitioning 4 positions when it comes to the ground game, and then both of them having those technical capabilities on the feet. Umar's got kicks as well. Cory Sandhagen flying knees. I think this is just an absolute treat for the fans, and it's one of the most high level fight IQ fights that I think we're going to get this year. And moving on to performance of the night, I'm going to give it to Shara Magomedov. If he plays the game plan that I've stated in the predictions, where he breaks Mikhail down first by, you know, chopping down the legs and then going to the body early, I think he'll be able to then fully exercise an amazing striking masterclass in the later rounds of that fight, which, as I said, I don't think he'll finish him, but he'll just dominate him with a great performance, which will get him that performance of the night win. And moving on to fighter to watch, I'm going to give it to Kaue Fernandes. I mean, Fernandes, he's one fight into his UFC career so far against Chikaze, but that being said though, I mean, he's got some nasty striking, especially with the kicks, and once he tidies up the ground game as well as, you know, puts on a statement as the away fighter on this card, he's a guy that's going to be very dangerous moving forward. Now, moving on to finish of the night, I'm giving it to Elvis Brenner. I've got this one not only because Brenner has the power in his hands to get this finish, but this is obviously my most controversial pick on the card. And if he can get this done, and in the way that both these guys fight, I think it'll just be a very notable finish on either side without a doubt, whether it's Alvarez, whether it's Brenner. But me saying Brenner, I think that he's going to be able to still finish the night. And if he gets this done, it will catapult him just outside that top 15 and possibly put him in a contender fight there soon enough, if he gets it done in the way that I'm thinking. And if you've enjoyed this content and you want to see more, check out the video that I've just got here on the screen. And if you've liked this video, please like, comment, subscribe. It really goes a long way for the channel, and I hope to catch you in the next one.